This video is kindly sponsored by OM System. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are heading to Eryri National Park in North Wales for a day of landscape photography with OM System's flagship camera, the OM-1 MK2. Now, I've had the OM-1 MK2 on loan from OM System since the end of 2025, and so far it's been a really enjoyable exploration into the Micro Four Thirds format. I've taken the camera out on a few shoots locally. We had some snow at the start of the year, which is rare in these parts, and it led to some amazing conditions for photography. I also took the camera to the North Wales coast last week to one of my favourite locations, and again I was just blessed with some lovely conditions, but I haven't taken this camera out on a serious hike, and I think that's where the Micro Four Thirds system just really shines. It's one of the reasons that I think this system has become so popular with landscape, outdoor and nature photographers. Now, this video is sponsored by OM System, but I don't get to keep the camera, and all of the views expressed in this video are completely my own. I just want to share in this video the things that I love about the OM-1 MK2, just talk openly about my experience using the camera, as well as highlight some of my favourite features. So, with that being said, let's head into the mountains. My love of the landscape has meant that the OM-1 MK2 has been on my radar for a little while now. There are many reasons why I think this camera is so appealing and so popular amongst landscape, outdoor and nature photographers. The 20 megapixel stacked CMOS sensor, the 5-axis 8.5 stops of built-in image stabilization, the IP53 rated weather sealing, the array of computational features and the compact form factor and lightweight lens lineup really does make the OM-1 stand out against some of the other camera systems out there. And I was really keen to discover and experience this for myself. For me personally, I always think it's fun to experiment and try out a different camera system than what I'm typically used to, because it can certainly offer a fresh perspective and a new way to take photos. So I thought I would start today's photography with a familiar composition, one that I've been wanting to revisit for quite a while, and I thought it's a good opportunity to talk about how I want to approach the photography today with the OM-1 MK2. So firstly, the composition. The thing that initially caught my attention was just the amazing texture of these really yellowy, fine grasses that are on this verge. The beauty of this trail is that the first half of it kind of meanders through this ancient woodland, and we have these really characterful old oak trees. And this frame that I'm looking at is a really nice composition because I'm looking up the verge, so you do have the sky in the shot, but today, because of the inclement weather that we've been having, the sky has a very natural blue tone to it, and it kind of complements the yellow of the grasses in the foreground. And then we just have these characterful oak trees that kind of bookend the frame, and their limbs kind of reach out into the centre and frame this fallen tree on the top of the verge. I'm going to mess around with different aspect ratios, but the main thing that I want to try and get right in camera today is actually how I choose to shoot it utilising the sensor and the computational features. So the computational features within the OM-1 MK2 I think are one of its real benefits. I think a common element of skepticism around Micro Four Thirds cameras is the smaller sensor size, but because of the computational features within the OM-1 MK2 you can actually utilise high-res shooting. If you shoot handheld, you can shoot up to 50 megapixels with a 14-bit RAW file, but if you use a tripod, like I'm using today, then you can get a whopping 80 megapixels, which is just amazing. I really enjoy printing, and I like to have that flexibility in editing. So it's just a case of waiting for the light for this first composition. So once that arrives and I take the shot, I will pop it up on screen. This part of the trail is really beautiful. Walking through this ancient woodland, I'm just reminded how important it is to get out and experience these places. As I left the woodland and began the ascent up the valley, the wind really started to pick up. I spotted a composition in the distance that gave me an opportunity to try out the 40-150 telephoto lens, and it would be a real test of the IBIS within the camera. Even with the wind rattling against the tripod, the photo was really sharp with incredible detail. The small sensor handled the vibrations perfectly, and I can see why Micro Four Thirds is such a popular choice for wildlife photography. I think this setup would definitely encourage me to shoot more telephoto, which just isn't something that I do an awful lot being a full frame shooter, because the lenses are often heavy and take up a lot of space in the bag. So we're at that point on the trail now where we're starting to see the evidence of the slate mining history of this particular valley. We've come across some of these old settlements, these derelict buildings, and I've actually placed you guys inside the remains of what looks like a barn or some kind of cottage. There's like a doorway here. I'm on the path, and at the end of the path there is this really characterful oak tree which looks like it's kind of reclaiming the gable end of one of these sheds or cottages or whatever it once was. I'm shooting this at around 18mm, so the 12 to 40 lens is sort of coming in clutch here, and compositionally it's pretty straightforward. Leading line of the path, the walls leading the eye into the frame, and just being careful not to include the sky in this particular photo. I want everything to be condensed into the central portion of the image. Don't want any distracting highlights or anything like that. And yeah, exposure wise, pretty straightforward. So I've got the 12 to 40mm f2.8 lens on for this particular composition because I'm trying to frame up this lovely waterfall, this lovely cascade with the distant oak woodland on the opposite shore. All I'm doing is composing the shot as a diagonal, so I have half of the frame taken up with the flow of the water, and then the other half of the frame is taken up with the woodland. And I think it sort of paints a pretty nice picture of the landscape. And the reason I wanted to take this photo was because I wanted to try and make use of the built-in ND filter within the computational menu of the OM-1 MK2. It is a digital ND filter, it's not a physical filter that goes over the front of the sensor, but as a landscape photographer, it is nice to not have to carry filters around. So I thought I would test it out with this particular shot. So I decided to go with a 3-stop ND filter for this particular composition. It's giving me a shutter speed of about 1/6 of a second, which is absolutely perfect just to capture a little bit of motion in the water. I'm at f6.3, so plenty of depth of field, and I'm at ISO 200. So looking at the image on the back of the camera, wouldn't be able to tell that it wasn't shot with a physical filter. The digital computation just looks great. So yeah, no complaints from me. I think it looks fantastic. The available strengths of ND within the OM-1 MK2 range from 1 stop all the way up to 6 stops. And for those looking to pursue landscape photography with minimal gear, it's really nice to see a feature like this built into the software of the camera. I think photographers who value that are going to find real benefit from this feature. Now you'll notice that I'm using a tripod for quite a lot of the photography in this video, and that's just because for traditional landscape photography, that's just a way that I like to shoot because it slows me down and it makes me a bit more methodical when out in the field. But that being said, I did want to experiment with some handheld shots because I know a lot of landscape photographers don't typically like to use tripods, and I was keen to see if I could use the built-in ND filters to create some longer exposures just shooting handheld. because the IBIS, as I mentioned, is so excellent in this camera, I was able to use the built-in ND filters and create some longer exposures without any problems. This particular photo was shot at about 1/4 of a second, and if you look at the water, it has plenty of motion blur, but the texture in the rock and the texture within the stone of the abandoned building in the background is absolutely sharp. Tons of detail in there. And I think that was, again, just a really pleasant surprise, and definitely means that you can use this camera capably in the field without a tripod if that's just the way that you prefer to shoot. So I've switched to the 40-150 f2.8 telephoto lens for this composition, and I'm going to utilise the built-in digital teleconverter within the computational menu to frame up this little outcrop where you have the end of the ridge line with this small collection of pine trees, and they are framed by the distant valley wall, which is probably a good couple of miles away. I tried shooting it without the digital teleconverter at 150mm, which full frame equivalent is about 300mm, but the reach just wasn't quite enough. So what I've done is decided to just use the teleconverter, and I'm probably going to end up cropping this to be a square crop, but it's a really nice composition. I would really, really love to have a little bit of light on this scene. If there was some light just catching the tops of those pine trees, it would be fantastic. But I don't know if that is going to happen. There's a lot of cloud around today. But even so, I still think it's a really lovely scene. Tell you what, it is so great to be out in the mountains again. What I love about this part of Eryri National Park is just the variety. You know, you've got the old mining industry with all of the man-made elements like the slate walls and the old abandoned buildings, but then you've also got like mountain vistas, you've got woodlands, you've got waterfalls and rivers. It's just an absolute playground as a landscape photographer. So I hope you're enjoying the video. Thanks for coming along with me today. Now, another computational feature I was keen to try out was the built-in graduated ND filter. Again, a digital emulation, but these filters can be extremely useful and at times essential for photographers who want to get as much right in camera as possible. For bright skies, for scenes with a wide dynamic range, graduated NDs can really help tame those highlights and help create an even exposure. The touchscreen on the OM-1 MK2 makes applying grads really easy. Similar to how the gradient filter masks work in Lightroom, you can just simply drag the filter into position on the back screen of the camera. And as with physical grad filters, you can also select either soft, medium or hard edges along with varying strengths from 1 to 3 stops. Now, something to be aware of is that you can't combine filters within the computational menus of the OM-1 MK2, at least at the moment. And I don't know if that's a limitation within the technical aspect of creating these filters, or if it's just something that could be released as a future firmware update. But in that particular composition that I just showed, I would have liked to be able to add a graduated ND filter for the sky and use another filter to get a correct exposure for the water in the foreground to create the motion blur that I was hoping to achieve, but you can't currently do that. So if that's something that you typically rely on a lot in your photography, you know, if you do seascapes or if you typically shoot in environments where you like to create longer exposures and combine filters, then that is just a consideration and something to keep in mind. Now, whilst the photography yesterday was challenging because of not only the steep ascent up the mountain, but the driving wind and the lack of light, I actually think that played into a lot of the strengths of the OM-1 MK2. If you watched my recent video with OM System looking at the OM-3, a camera much more suited for travel photography, for street photography, you might have heard me mention about the ergonomics of the OM-3 and how that was something that I was struggling to get to grips with, quite literally. The experience of holding the OM3 was just something that was a little bit more challenging. Now, many of those issues have been fixed with the OM-1 Mark II. The actual experience of using this camera for photography was an absolute delight. The grip on it is so substantial, it fits like an absolute glove in my hand. The dial layout is much more legible, logical, and I think for landscape photographers, I think this is something that is just really well considered and is a wonderful design. The weight saving and the compact nature of this system was definitely something that I noticed when I was out in the field. You know, the lenses are small but optically perform so well. The body is small and compact, and whilst I had to take some filming equipment out with me to make the video, I definitely noticed how much lighter my overall pack was when I was actually taking this camera out with me. And I think for many landscape photographers, that is something that they look for. You know, if you are serious about climbing mountains and spending considerable amounts of time in the outdoors, then it's really nice to have a capable, well-performing camera system that doesn't weigh an absolute ton. There's no point in carrying additional weight if you don't need to. Now, I've absolutely loved the experience of shooting with the OM-1 Mark II. This is absolutely a camera that I could easily include in my kit and make it a part of my setup. This is a camera that far transcends landscape and outdoor photography. This is a perfectly capable camera in a number of different scenarios. If you do have any questions about the OM-1 Mark II, if there's anything that you're curious about, leave a comment down below and I might be able to do another video where I can address some of those in a bit more detail. As always, I want to thank you guys for all of your support. It's only because of you watching my videos that partnerships like this are possible. And with that being said, I also want to say a big thank you to OM System for partnering with me on this particular video. As always, if you did enjoy it, do make sure to give the video a thumbs up, and I'd love it if you could take a second to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you can get notified of when new videos come out. So until next time, take care, and I will see you in the next episode.